I Am the Specialist of the Strange, written by Dakota Frandsen, narrated by Douglas MacArthur, published by Bald and Bonkers Network, LLC. Section 4, Growing Up and Taking Aim, Part 1, April 2004. Earth, United States, Idaho, Murtaugh School. Boise School. Field trip to the state capital, Boise. Had an incident at the old Idaho penitentiary where I saw an apparition hanging on death row. No one believed me. Mostly my fault, from spending most of my time trying to scare the girls in my class. As our group was taking a tour of the prison, we went up to the second floor of the execution chamber, where the noose was on display. As the group started to leave, a man who was tied at the wrists and legs was walking towards the noose. I watched as the rope was secured around his neck, and the floor opened beneath him. Problem was, the rope wasn't secured correctly. In order to snap the man's neck, he just hung there, suffocating. I tried talking about my story, but no one believed me due to reasons mentioned early. However, a few years later, when the Ghost Adventures came through town for their first season, they captured a shadow apparition on death row, identifying the man as Raymond Snowden. Snowden is often referred to as Idaho's Jack the Ripper, sentenced to prison after violently stabbing a woman who resisted his advances. He claimed to have killed 3 other women, but this was never proven. Snowden was the man I saw. Spring 2004, Earth, United States, Idaho, Twin Falls. Had to get my tonsils and adenoids removed at the age of 9. For some reason, blood samples would either disappear or pooled after collection, requiring further blood draws to be done. When I would have to be taken to a parent facility in Boise later in life for separate medical incidents, the doctors there questioned why it would be done in the first place. The Twin Falls Hospital does not have the best reputation. The facility covered up a number of lawsuits. Most legal proceedings are handled by the parent facility in Boise due to number of malpractice lawsuits that continue to pile up and be hidden away. Several occasions. 2005-2006. My father suddenly tries to make contact as he was being shipped over to Iraq. Shortly after the attacks on September 11th, my father enlisted in a local National Guard branch in one of the very few moments I could have to say I was proud he was my dad, and for a time I was. I was naive and did want a relationship with my father in spite of earlier incidents. The only hitch was I was still nervous around my stepmother, despite everyone assuming I had completely blocked out the knife incident. How could I when to this day my oblivious mother continues to bring it up in conversations with strangers and specifically worded it to make me sound like a monster? Oh well, I guess. Conversations between my father and I took place mostly online through early morning instant messaging. As Censored was old enough to use a computer, the same applied to her. No one ever stopped to realize I was doing all I could to avoid my stepmother. About 6 months after he had returned from deployment, my sister, Censored, was born, fully grown. Visitations with my father became more prevalent, but a hidden darkness seemed to try to grasp my attention. My abilities started to appear, knowing that my life was potentially in danger, making my own skin feel uneasy around both my father and stepmother. I constantly felt I needed to be on high alert in case I needed to make a run for it. I should have stayed away, but my attention kept returning to them as more siblings were born in the years to follow. My brothers, Censored, were born after my stepmother had an alleged miscarriage. It was also roughly this time period she had started to take pills, later to be pointed out to be acid. As time went on, I noticed the abuse seemed to focus on Addison, going as far as my father dragging her into a bedroom and to be followed by a series of screams. My stepmother did nothing to stop it. It was after this I wanted nothing to do with my father unless witnesses were present. Public place, only the kids, or at my grandfather's place were the conditions I wanted. Of course, no one listened. It should be noted my stepmother would frequently tell my younger siblings to not tell anyone the family secret whenever they would go to a large gathering of people. I didn't catch it at the time, or if I did, I never got an answer and would soon forget the matter. December 2005, Earth, United States, Idaho, Murtaugh. More supernatural encounters take place during a dreadful Christmas program I was forced into. I was never really into school activities. Most appearing as strange objects appearing in my grandmother's photos. With most paranormal photos, orbs manifested, but these were very unusual. Unlike most orbs, which were reflections of water and dust in the air, these had features that would make hardcore skeptics consider the possibility of ghostly happenings. The first was a bright yellow orb with a distorted face in the middle and lightning filling the body. The second was a green partial orb with feet. The third was a shadow of one of my friends facing the opposite direction as the rest of the group. Unfortunately, these photos were lost in time despite my efforts to try and retrace what happened to them. Summer 2006. Earth, United States, Idaho. Father discharged from service, possibly dishonorable. Abuse on censored worsens. I stayed away this time upon getting the indication no more children would emerge via my sources, though later revelations would indicate my stepmother had more miscarriages. It should be noted that the signs of rather dark activities involving many parties were always quite clear, but my somewhat naive mindset at the time wasn't able to process it all. Even the mind I carry at the age of 22, how old I was at the time of this initial addition to this listing, still struggles to comprehend the first-hand knowledge of it all. November 23rd, 2006, Earth, United States, Idaho, Murtaugh, Twin Falls, Boise. Thanksgiving, my gallbladder gave out. I was staying with my grandparents while my mom worked. While normally a day I would practically be stalking the kitchen, I mostly slept as I was not feeling well, barely able to eat a bite of ice cream and a turkey sandwich. That night, I had a sharp pain in my side, violently getting sick from anything my grandmother tried to give me to help. I was rushed to the hospital, where I was deemed to be going into renal failure. The doctors at the hospital said my case was too severe, but the parent facility in Boise would be willing to take me. While on the hospital ride, I would cycle in and out of consciousness. I remember seeing flashes of the stereotypical description of heaven, with my deceased relatives watching with others as I seemed to flicker in and out. They were confused as to why I was there so soon, only led to asking somewhat panicked questions when they would be seeing me just phase in and out. Hospital in Boise verified that I was going into renal failure. My gallbladder had shut down, infecting the rest of my system. They managed to get me stabilized, but said I would likely need surgery to remove my gallbladder. I was in the hospital for a month to recover. Throughout the ordeal, I remember visitors stopping by, other than relatives. Some were the deceased relatives who crossed over. Others were patients in the hospital who were already dead or close to it. Others may have been star family, trying to offer words of encouragement and helping stabilize my system from their side. Apparently, the disruption in this physical vessel was reflected in my other body, possible quantum entanglement. My alter ego, higher self, whatever the heck people call it, seemed to thrash about from inside the pod while alerts were sent of the disturbance. January 19th, 2007, Earth, United States, Idaho, Twin Falls, Boise. Surgery to have my gallbladder removed got moved to my 11th birthday. I was in the 5th grade. I remember brief dreams of what I now know is a medical ship similar to the Excelsior, an alien mothership tied to the GFW. I looked older than I was, mid-20s, and I had hair. Before the surgery, a woman came up and explained that others would be posted at the hospital to keep an eye on my Terran body while it recovered. Once again, blood samples would mysteriously disappear. There were complications during the surgery, excess swelling in the abdomen that had to be cut away. It seemed that if the surgery hadn't been forced to change dates, I could have been in some serious trouble. While in recovery for a couple more weeks, I remember flashes of the stasis pod bay. My consciousness seemed to directly switch between both vessels thanks to the state I was in. Fall 2008. Fights at school and at home start to drive my mind into dark places, leaving suicide as an option. Around this time, I moved in with my maternal grandparents as well, leaving me to attend school with a group of rather prejudiced individuals I thought were friends. My grandparents lived in the small town of Murtaugh, and I spent some time in my elementary school years growing up there. My childish, naive mindset made me believe these people were my friends. The people there seemed friendly, but the second they found out that an individual was not a member of the local church, that individual was treated as an outcast. Just about anyone who left the area could back me up on this statement. The constant conflict made it so I would start planning how I would end my own life. Upon a warm fall night, I decided it was time. In my bedroom was a large closet with metal railings that looked sturdy enough to hold my weight. I had decided the best method to approach this was to hang myself from the railing using an old belt. The closet itself wasn't very high, and I have always been tall for my age, making the attempt somewhat of a challenge. I didn't want anyone to stop me, and I tried to mask any noise I made to make it just seem like I was having a rough night's sleep. To counter the challenge, I set a chair in a spot where my feet could touch it just enough to focus my weight more towards my head as I dangled. The plan was to kick the chair back and cut off blood flow. The belt would squeeze tighter till I was deprived of oxygen. Maybe that was what triggered it. I honestly cannot say if my plan had worked, or if the intervention had timed its arrival to stop me, but the following spooked me nonetheless. In what would have been my final moments, something caused my body to freeze. A bright blue light emerged out of nowhere, completely overriding my senses. The energy from it was so intense, it made my surroundings vanish, giving the appearance I was floating. I took a few moments to look around, as my eyes were the only parts of my body that could move, and saw light dance as if I was deep underwater. Suddenly a man appeared before me, his image blurred. I could tell he had long brown hair and facial hair, and wore what looked like a white robe. The vibe I was receiving from his presence felt calm, friendly, and concerned about my well-being. My external senses tried to give me an indication someone else was nearby, but my focus was centered on what was unfolding before me to really take notice. The man walked closer to me, his image looking clearer as he approached. Soon he starts to speak. No judgment, no criticism, just concern. "Dakota, there is someone here that you should meet." The man stepped aside and revealed a young girl, roughly the age of 5 or 6. She had long blonde hair, somewhat tan skin, and the brightest blue eyes I'd ever seen. Immediately, I could tell the little girl was kin to me, as she had a striking resemblance to my sisters. Tears filled her eyes, making them sparkle like the ocean on a blissful summer day, instantly sending my heart into a deep abyss as the sensation of guilt overcame me. But it wasn't her appearance that pulled me out of that trance. Rather, it was what she said to me. She approached me, placed her hand on my cheek, and cried, "Daddy, please don't do it." As the little girl leaned in to kiss me on the cheek, the vision disappeared, and I am back in the closet like nothing happened. I tried to shake off what I had seen by going to bed, but the image would find ways to interfere in future events. Her interference led to me giving her the name Olivia Hope, after the name was passed on to me through future experiments meant to help me try to make contact with her to understand what I had witnessed.